Well, as China looks to strengthen its military, the leaders of the US, UK and Australia are set to announce plans to provide Australia with nuclear-powered submarines. US President Joe Biden is on his way to California, where he'll be meeting the UK and Australian Prime Ministers. The so-called AUKUS plan was announced in 2021 as part of moves to counter China's military influence in the Pacific. Well, from all these two interconnected stories, we can now cross to Washington and speak to Arise US correspondent Eric Ham. Good to see you, Eric. So President Xi Jinping saying that China must modernize its military to make it a wall of steel. What's been the reaction to that in America?
Well, Charles, the United States recognizes that China has been beefing up its military and been doing so for quite some time. In fact, what we are now learning is that China has been growing its nuclear capabilities for some years. In fact, many U.S. generals believe that the United States and China are actually headed to a military confrontation in the next 2 to 3 years, in fact. And so many believe that, of course, this could take place over Taiwan. As we have all seen, China has become increasingly more bellicose in its ongoing efforts and aggression towards Taiwan, as well as the South China Seas. Of course, we know that this meeting that will take place today is an effort to try to curb those ambitions by China. And President Biden has made China and, of course, Asia, his biggest foreign policy his priority since coming into office. And what we're seeing now is both of these countries continuing to ratchet up the aggressive talk towards one another. And, of course, many believe that it's not a matter of if, but when these two countries eventually lock horns.
And I guess in that context, Eric, Mr. Xi's speech is particularly significant because it suggests a much more nationalistic tone and direction of travel for Beijing. I mean, Mr. Xi's comments seem to be phrased much more in the context of China feeling that the US is seeking to contain it. So is that how it's being seen in Washington, a more defensive, nationalistic tone?
Well, in the United States, it's actually seen very similar to how China sees itself as under threat by the United States. In the United States, many believe that it is the United States and the West that is under threat by China. Of course, many look towards China's technological companies such as ZTE, Huawei, and now TikTok as companies that are actually in place to do the bidding of the CCP. In addition to that, the spy balloons that were recently seen flying over the United States and Canadian waters certainly haven't helped. And now, again, with ongoing aggressions in the Taiwan Straits and the South China Seas, many believe in the United States that it is China that seems to be attempting to express or somehow showcase its military prowess, along with ongoing confrontations. Of course, we remember when the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi traveled to Taiwan, and of course, those military flyovers that took place while she was there. So again, it is the United States that believes that China is beginning to exert its military power and to showcase that. And of course, the United States is only bracing for what is to come, which is why you see the United States not only through its military, but also through its diplomatic channels, continuing to engage with its allies beyond Japan and South Korea. And of course, now you see this transfer of nuclear technology with submarines to Australia, which is again seen as another effort to try to curb China's increasing aggressions in the West.
Well, now that you've kind of pipped me to that question and you brought it up, let's sort of get into it, because I mean, as China strengthens its military, I mean, the US, the UK and Australia are meeting in California to discuss key details of that new sort of defense agreement known as AUKUS, and it's aimed at countering what they see as China's threat in the Indo-Pacific. Just tell us more. I mean, I expect the meeting is later in the day. It hasn't actually started yet, has it?
Well, actually, it's going to be starting in just a matter of minutes. In fact, if we go back just a year or so ago, remember it was France that was supposed to be involved in working with Australia to provide this technology, and the United States stepped in, and this caused major tensions between the United States and France. And now we see that the United States working very closely with Australia and the UK to provide this technology. But still, Charles, there are many questions abound, and we're waiting to see what the details are going to look like in terms of how this transfer capability is going to play out. Because right now, Australia doesn't have the infrastructure for nuclear propulsion submarines. And so the question, of course, is how does this transfer take place, if it takes place at all? Or is this going to be an operation where the submarines are actually built between the UK and the United States and provided to Australia? So those are some of the details that we expect to hear today when the three leaders actually meet in San Diego.
Eric, thanks very much indeed. Eric Ham, Arise US correspondent, talking to me there from Washington.